Good, good morning. Good morning. Welcome everyone to our April Pulse webinar. This month's session is titled From Confrontation to Collaboration with Pulse on behalf of the University of the Virgin Islands Institute for Leadership and Organizational Effectiveness. I'm pleased to welcome you to another one of our sessions with Dr. Nancy Love. I am Zenzi Hodge. I am the director of UVI-ILOE, and we're pleased to be able to make these webinars available to you so that you get more insight into the Pulse Grid, and also so you can learn how our Pulse techniques can help you in your organizations as you deal with difficult conversations, managing through change, and even conflict negotiation. This morning's format is going to take a slight change. We normally do about a 1-hour session, and based on some of the feedback from our webinar attendees, we decided to do an abbreviated webinar session this month, and so we will have a 30-minute session. You'll still have full interaction with Dr. Love, but we'll do 20 minutes of presentation, and then we will open up for a question and answer for the last 10 minutes of the session. So we should be able to finish right about 30 minutes. For those of you that are new to our webinar, if you have any questions during the course of the session, you have the opportunity to send messages to us via chat, and we will answer those directly. If you do not want to hold those questions until the end of the session, you will see on your toolbar a raise hand icon, and if you click that, I will be able to chat with you directly to address technical issues, audio issues, or just any questions you have as Dr. Love continues with her presentation. So now I would like to turn the session over to Dr. Nancy Love as we begin Confrontation to Collaboration with Pulse.
Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be back here with you again. Let me just, it's having a few issues with my computer this morning, but that's kind of how things go, isn't it, when you need them? Okay. And welcome to UVI-PULSE webinar series. As Ms. Hodges told you, we're going to do a little bit of a shorter version of things this morning and going forward based on some feedback that she's received from people that maybe the full hour is a bit long for some people, so we're going to try a little shorter approach to this. So I may be talking fast and hopefully you'll have all of your questions answered. We're going to talk, I call it from C to C, but we're going to talk about moving from confrontation to collaboration. And the whole idea here, so often people are afraid of confrontation and so afraid that they really don't know what to do with it. And we've talked about that. We talked about overcoming fear and feel the fear and do it anyway. And we've done a lot of examination of what it takes to move past confrontation. But today we're going to put it all together and sort of give you a destination, which is collaboration. We're going to talk about why it's important to know how to move through the zones. And you'll notice below there in Learn, I've talked about what those zones are. Confrontation is also known as, in Pulse language, the red zone. And collaboration is also known as the green zone. And so the whole objective is take people from the red zone where they may be stuck and in a confrontational mode. And I'm not just talking about intellectually or any one thing, but it's an emotional stuckness, a physical stuckness, and an intellectual stuckness. They don't know enough to make a shift. Collaboration is in the green zone, and it's in that green zone that we actually move forward and into the future. Red zone is more past because all of that emotional stuff comes from the past. And in the green zone, it's more about the future and creating a shared future for everyone in whatever collaboration or collaboration project you've taken on. So there is a yellow zone, and that's the yellow zone of moving from C to C. It's a very cautionary place, and it's actually where you find the pulse frame, and so I'll talk more about that. And then I want to talk a little bit about compounding collaboration. It's like compounding interest, right? There is this whole idea that if you put a little bit of collaboration forward, it will grow exponentially. And exponential growth is something that really our brains as human beings, we don't really get that. It's really hard to understand how exponential growth works. But if you try a little bit of collaboration, you'll notice that you get a lot back. And that's that compounding effect. We'll talk more about that. And then I want to ask you again, as I do every time, to give me an idea of what you could do. What would you agree to do to increase collaboration or move from confrontation to collaboration in a situation that you're facing in your life? So here are the zones. Confrontation, C to C with pulse, moving to collaboration. And there's actually a video on YouTube. If you search the Pulse Institute and then you look for changing zones, you'll find a video that really illustrates this, about how we move from confrontation through that yellow's cautionary zone into collaboration. And it really does show you that this is actually more than just circles. Oh, let's go back. Okay. Having one of those days. End the slideshow. That's not what we want. Sorry. There we go. Okay. If I take the drawing tool here and I show you that what happens is that we usually end up here. Okay. I am sorry. Usually I'm pretty good at this stuff. I don't know what's going on. Here in this zone is the red zone, and it takes a little time for us to move out, but when we can start to change perceptions, we can move through that cautionary zone where pulse is, and we can move over and into the green zone. But it's just a cautionary note right now that sometimes something happens here that triggers us back over here. And now we're in confrontation again, but we don't have to stay there anymore because we know how to get out of it. And we can move over into collaboration. And so as we talk about moving to collaboration today, just know that there are kicks that take you back. And what happens is the time over in the red zone shortens, and you get better at moving quickly to collaboration. And this is kind of the map of most relationships, I think. We try and spend as much time as we can over here, but sometimes things get back here. Okay? All right. So the red zone is where we have a reflex, and those reflexes are pretty well known: fight, flight, or freeze. And you will probably have experienced that, right? Anytime you feel threatened, there is this energy that pulls the blood out of your brain and into your extremities and into your the rest of your cardiovascular system, getting ready to either take flight, stand very still and freeze, or to fight, right? And so that you're protecting your organs. There's lots of, your heart is pumping faster, your palms are sweating. All of that happens in that perception of threat. We've been talking about that when we talked about fear and overcoming fear. And so we have physical indications that we are feeling threatened. And really what happens anatomically is that the blood rushes from your brain to other places in your body to save you from whatever it is that is threatening you, right? So it is not just an emotional state, because emotionally too, you either fight the person by arguing with them or shutting down, which is the flight, right, doing the silent treatment thing, or freezing in place and not really knowing what to do, feeling completely overwhelmed and not kind of having an out-of-body experience. And am I really here? Is this really happening? Oh my goodness. Right? So there's that kind of thing that can happen when you have that perception of threat. So the collaboration on the other hand is that green zone where you feel like, okay, this is working. I feel connected to this person. You begin to open up. You begin to relax into the situation. You're feeling not threatened, but connected. And so there's this sense of connection that is really quite wonderful when you get to that green zone. And I think as a skilled mediator and, you know, someone who has studied all of this, my work daily is to stay in the green zone and to work in collaboration whenever and wherever I can. If I feel threatened, of course, I do the same thing as I did in the diagram and move back into confrontation. And I can go there. I'm very familiar with that place. I was a high school principal after all. And there are times when you have to be that confrontational person for your own safety. And it's usually in a threatening situation where we do that. But in collaboration, that's a little bit different, right? There's this perception of inclusion and belonging. And a friend of mine actually just published this book called Breakthrough to Yes, and it's by David Savage. The subtitle I love. It's Unlocking the Possible Within a Culture of Collaboration. And so when you talk about collaboration, he's actually done this wonderful study of what it is and how it is. He talked to many people, did some experiments, and he asked me 2 questions, and I answered them in the book, so I'm just going to read them to you because it's hard to believe sometimes that what gets published is your words. Reasons for collaborating are not always evident to someone who has spent most of their lives trying to be right or feeling they need to be an expert at something. So it becomes a bit of a challenge, right? We all want to be right. We all want to be the top of the heap. We all want to prove that we're qualified, even if we're doing an imposter thing. And so actually getting down the walls and relaxing and releasing and relating so that you can collaborate does take some courage and a few other things too. The payoff, relationships forged in collaborative processes are strong and respectful. You know where someone is coming from once you've been in a collaborative process with them, which is very, very true. And how, this is something that I firmly believe in, actually David put it in the book, how a decision is made is as important as what the decision is. So I always say to people, collaborate early and often, right? And so, you know, we're trying to create a collaborative culture. The cultures that we live in now don't often allow us to do that. And so it really does take a push from you to move people to collaboration. So it's not a gentle thing, which is often what people think. It's that it's a gentle place, but it is a place where people can think together, where people can build something together, where people leave their egos behind and actually work together on a project or on a life, a life together, right? And of course, the collaborative process begins with those 3 R's, the relax, release, relate, or those come eventually. You know you're in true collaboration when you're in complete trust of the other person that you're working with. And, you know, that trust, of course, we know that builds with the use of the skills from PULSE, and so we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. I'm going to be having to watch the time here, and maybe, Zenza, you can type me when I've got about 3 minutes left. Okay, so moving from confrontation to collaboration, this is what you can use to do that. You can move from fight, flight, or freeze to release, relax, relate. See my pointer will work here. You can do this kind of move through this shift. It's just not easy. I mean, you have to get a hold of your brain. Like, remember we talked about in fear that the amygdala takes over and your reptile brain is in gear. So it's about taking that deep breath. I mean, people talk about that all the time. Take a deep breath. Just take a deep breath. And then move on. And if you can do that, you can move into that relax, release, relate. And you can actually have a pretty successful conversation, right, once you get there. And here's how this pulse frame is really how you move other people from fight, flight, or freeze through a shift to release, relax, relate. And we do it through preparing them for a conversation by looking at how you're going to have the conversation. Uncover what the conversation is about. Learn why it's important to you and why it's important to them, and share that with each other. And then that gives you a criteria for then creating a brainstorm and asking each other, what if we did this or what if we did that? And then moving through to explain, where we say, what's next? What are we committed to doing together? Right? So you can see how this builds towards a collaboration and away from that confrontation and fear. I mean, I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of mediations, and in every case, people come in confronting each other. They don't want to be there. It's uncomfortable. And as we talk and as we answer the questions along the side here, what we see is people move towards collaboration, because we get rid of all of the fears and the unknowns, and we begin to relax out of that confrontation red zone where this is happening and they're blaming each other and they're feeling threatened, to where they start to see that the other person doesn't really have horns, that they're really a good person. They were just in a bad situation maybe, and they move towards understanding and agreement. I think I just went back. What does it take to collaborate? I talked a little bit about the fact that it takes courage to collaborate. And it does. I mean, we're crossing a gap here, right? Between a rock and a hard place, really. And sometimes you just don't want to have that conversation. But if you can move into it, and if you can take the courage that you find from overcoming fear, you can move towards a collaborative process, and you can break through, as David says, break through to yes, right, and build that collaborative culture. There are things that get in the way, of course, right? But I mean, really, it's about compassion, and so we use heart to talk about compassion, right? Hush, empathize, attend, reflect, and trust. And so building that trust, but first of all, to do that, you have to care about the other person. You really have to show them some compassion and to move towards it. You've got to want to collaborate. You've got to want to solve the problem, right? So that compassion has to come from within. Confidence that you can do it, that you can make a difference, that you can take that giant leap and know that the net will appear, right? And competence. And the competence, I'm hoping that you see that this frame, once you know it, will give you that competence. You know now the secrets to mediation and how people in conversation respond to things, and you know the right kinds of questions to ask them and the right kind of tools to use to move them towards a collaborative culture, a collaborative environment. We'll talk about compounding that C-to-C effect, right? And it's kind of like this, you become a cog in the wheel and you use pulse, right? And different are, you know, you resolve differences with other people. That's kind of what happens here, because this thing starts to move this way, right? And then you have better working relationship, and the satisfaction and productivity in your workplace goes up. And it just grows, you know, the one small gear becomes a bigger gear, and away you go. And you begin to compound the interest. And you can see that here, this is just an x-ray, if you like, of the pulse frame, where, you know, you purpose, process, protocol, confidentiality, authority, roles, and time are all part of that prepare stage. And in here we have heart, hush, empathize, attend, reflect, and trust, all part of the uncover stage. We're looking at the past. Power, paraphrase, open question, wait, empathize, and reframe, part of the learn stage, understanding what what are the underlying motivators, what are the criteria that people have, what beach are they on, what are they looking for in the world. And in search, we're looking at CPR, content processing response, and all of the things that people do and say that lead them to a place where they see that they can trust the other person, that there is a solution, and that we can move forward. And then we move up to the plan, which is, explaining in writing what we're going to do next. So this is kind of the x-ray of it. That's where our skills come in. And we have heart here as a base. If you fold this up again, it becomes the tetrahedron, right? And ghost as our base sets of skills. And the 6 freedoms are here. Be heard, be known, be positive, choose, dream, and act. Right? And the 6 freedoms are, of course, from appreciative inquiry. And here we have all of the beaches and all of the ways that people can be in the world and what they're looking for in the world. So if you put all of that together and you compound it, you end up with this C to C effect, as we say, that confrontation to collaboration. It's about taking that deep breath, checking your posture, standing up straight, and stepping into it. And you can make a difference. You can make a difference. Just use your skills and use the process. And I talked about this, just change from the past through the present and to the future, right? And that's what Pulse is all about. Let's take things from the past, choose from the past, create a future, and in the present, let's look at change and how we can manage that, right? So the approach in prepare, we change it to a confident. We know what's going to happen because we believe in appreciative inquiry and we believe in that anticipatory principle where we can see the puck in the net or we can see the ball in the net and we move towards that. And we uncover the story from the past. We choose the best bits of it. When was it good? What kinds of stuff worked, right? Then we move to the perception in Learn. We change that perception by making that shift from red through yellow to green. So use the tools that you know, that you've learned with us, or that if you haven't, then have a look at the videos that are available to you, and or write us, and we'll figure out how to make sure you have those tools at your disposal. And take the lessons from, I chose the Wizard of Oz, I think, because they worked together. They did not all want the same thing, right? The Tin Man wanted a heart, the Scarecrow wanted a brain, and the Cowardly Lion wanted courage. Dorothy wanted to go home. But together, they all found what they needed and the resources that it would take to move things forward. That's collaboration. Let's work together. I mean, in the beginning, you wouldn't think that this motley crew would have opportunities to gain knowledge, etc., from each other. But they did. And they made it. And so can you. I had 2 examples of collaboration this week. I'm going to call it a car event. A guy's drivetrain fell out of his truck in front of me, and I ran over it and had 2 flat tires, and so I had to call for a tow truck and deal with the insurance company and deal with everybody. And so I had this crowd of people around me trying to solve the problem of getting my car back together and on the road. And it was a collaborative effort. We all had a piece of it, and we were all looking to create, moving towards a similar goal, but wanting to get that case fixed. And yesterday my dad had surgery, and so I was watching. Monday we met with 7 different people who asked him all kinds of different questions. One of them wanted his blood, and chest x-ray, a breathing, a respiratory technologist talked to him, an internist, not an intern, yeah, an internal medicine guy, I'm not sure what they're called, anesthetist, and everybody kind of worked together. They're all working on the Max project. Let's get Max through this surgery together, and they did. And I'm grateful for that, for sure. But that's collaboration, right? if everybody wants to be right and everybody wants to, be uncollaborative, then that can really cause some issues for many people. So it's important. I mean, if you think that collaboration is not important, you just have to think again, because it is so important. So moving from C to C requires you to control your thoughts, because they become words and deeds and habits. There's an old Chinese saying about that. Control your thoughts. They become words. Words become deeds, and deeds become habits. And you have to smile kind of from the inside out, right? I don't know if you guys have Bank of Montreal commercials where you are. You probably don't. But there is a Bank of Montreal commercial on right now where the girl comes up to the counter and says, well, don't you guys have this, corporate friendliness thing? It's an acronym, SMILE. Service means I like everyone. Well, it's not really like that. It's it's more of a, I do like everyone, and therefore I smile. So it's not that the smile is put on, or that it's less than authentic. Genuineness and authenticity will always come through. Right? You got to give friendship to get it, and I think most of my really good friends came as a result of a collaborative project that we worked on. I think it's a really good way to build friendships with each other. And moving from C to C, sit-up straight posture is everything. Yeah, the words from my mother and my grandmother, even my great-grandmother, sit up straight. And it has really served me well in the world. I mean, if you can sit up straight and move towards something and resolve issues together, not that you have all the answers, but someone in the room does. And that's what collaboration is about. So sit up straight and know that, right? Be confident and competent and compassionate, and move forward and watch the universe unfold, right? Because it's amazing sometimes how it works. So I'm going to ask you for one small experiment. Just mail it to me at nancylove@pulseinstitute.com or drnancylove@gmail. Whatever email you have for me, just go ahead and use that one. And I'll send it back to you in about 30 days, and we can have that conversation about whether or not you were actually able to do that. One small step you will take to make a change or a difference for what you've been reminded of today. Remember that, I'm not teaching you anything new. I'm just reminding you what you know. And what you know is that it's easy to move from confrontation to collaboration. You just have to want to. You just have to want to. So we went from confrontation to collaboration, why it's important in the zone, how you move through those zones. Please check out that YouTube video of moving through the zones. It's quite good. On the learn part, just talking about confrontation is the red zone, collaboration is the green zone. And our goal, ultimately, at least mine, personally, is to stay in the green zone. And I only move into the red zone when I'm threatened. I know the skills of the red zone, too. I've been there. But I think that, the world will be a better place when we can all begin that collaborative process, start putting collaboration out into the world, as David says in his book, and watching it grow, watching it compounding through that compounding collaboration effect. Right? And we looked at what your small experiment might be. Okay. Just a reminder that on May 11th we're going to look at the power of curiosity with Pulse, and how that can change things, how you can shift people with just the question. It's going to be all about questions, how you ask them, what you listen for in the answers, and how you build the next question. You hinge it down to get really a clear, deep understanding of what's going on. And in June we'll talk about compassion again in heart, and the whole idea of how compassion works, and how you can create a neural link with the other person, a link through your brain with that other person through the skills of heart, and gain compassion with them, gain understanding, gain their trust. Yeah. And I think that's it for now. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. I'm ready for questions when you are.
And we'd like to open the floor up now for questions if you have any questions on today's webinar. And you are able to use the raise hand icon on your toolbar, or if you are dialing in via phone, you can ask your questions that way as well. And while we wait to see if there are any questions, again, I just wanted to share the upcoming webinars that we have through this summer. On May 11th, we will look at the power of curiosity with Pulse, and then we'll close out the first half of this series on June 8th with the Heart of Compassion with Pulse. Both of those sessions will be facilitated by Dr. Nancy Love. We do have a question that came in via our online chat. And Dr. Love, the question is, how can you apply these principles when you are with a caller over the phone?
I think it's a little trickier because you don't have that opportunity to make eye contact and to actually pull them into the conversation. But there's so much of communication that is verbal, tone, pace, all of those things you can hear. You can hear the length of the pauses and all of that. And it's easy for you to give people space with the right kind of language and tone and speed to have them move from that confrontational mode to collaboration. I think, and it's an invitation. It's always an invitation, right? The first question being, so, what do you hope to get from this call, and how would you like to proceed, right? We use prepare for that and make a suggestion for them. Here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to ask you some questions about, what you hope to accomplish with the call so we can set a goal for it. What's important to you? I really want to know that, and I want to be able to share what's important to me. And then I think we could probably search some options and look at some things that would be possible to meet both of our needs. And then we can come up with a plan of action. And so just inviting people into that kind of a conversation can work. Now, if they're super in the red zone, please know there's no blood in their brain. And so you have to find a way to calm them down and get them ready for that. And sometimes if they're moving towards you, if they're fighting you, then you may have to stand up to them and we talked about this in the fear broadcast, where you have to kind of meet them where they are. So if you're getting loud voices from them, then, you may have to be loud yourself to get them to pay attention, right? But you go from loud like this to let's just talk about it because we can do this in the same sentence, and you can bring them down with you. Right? But match and move, and match and move, and match and move. And that kind of tonality can really help, as well as just, staying with them. Be compassionate on the phone. Not things like, I understand, because I understand. See, you can't really understand where other person is coming from. You're not there, you're not with them. So I understand can be a trigger, and it can actually keep people in the red zone. So there's some language that you can use that would move them forward. Something like, I can't even imagine how difficult this has been for you, is a better way to calm them down. Even though I know that some people use I understand as an intentionally to connect with the other person, but that's not what they need from you at that point, because it's not about you. You have to get over where they are and say, I can't even imagine it because I'm not where you are. And that alone could kind of make them drop their shoulders and just, okay, she's hearing me, right? And using the power tool, paraphrase what they've said, ask an open question, wait, empathize, and reframe. All of it can be done on the phone, for sure.
Thank you very much for the question. I think we have time for just about one more question. And Dr. Love, while we wait, can you give us just a little insight into what we will hear during the May webinar on the power of curiosity with Pulse?
Yeah, it's all about questioning and asking the right question at the right time, and so it's part of what we were just talking about with phone calls and moving people from confrontation to collaboration there. You know, because appreciative inquiry is full of questions and asking the right question at the right time and meeting all of those principles of appreciative inquiry. So it will be about that, how to be curious and how to respond to someone who's answering your curious questions.
Great. That's good. So I think we should all be curious about what we're gonna hear next month as well.
Exactly. That was a good question.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for our April webinar. We look forward to seeing you next month. You will receive an email from us thanking you for joining today's session, and you can register on our website, which is ILOE.UVI.edu. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you.